Film preservation is just a left-handed form of human endeavor. Okay, well, I showed that because we were able to do that special feature for the what is now the official Blu-ray release of Woman on the Run, which is available right out here, as well as our restoration of Too Late for Tears, which has a similarly complex story about how we had to find the original elements for that and restore that as well. And I do give huge thanks and props to the UCLA Film and Television Archive, and especially Scott McQueen, who you saw there on screen, who kind of shepherded that whole project. So it's not easy to do this stuff, but it's very rewarding because you get to show the results to an audience who might not have any other chance to see a film like this. So that I'm not going to talk very much here because you saw that and you know the drill. I really do think that Woman on the Run is a terrific film. Just a couple of little pieces of background information about it. This may seem like a common thread in this, that I'm sort of touting the contributions of the women in this era who were often overlooked. And Woman on the Run, another film with a female protagonist, like The Reckless Moment. It goes beyond that in this case because Ann Sheridan was also the silent producer of the film. She reached kind of a crossroads in her career where she didn't think that Warner Brothers was giving her the parts that she deserved, because back then middle-aged for a woman was about 34, and she just wasn't getting those roles anymore, and so she decided to strike out on her own. And when she teamed up with a fellow named Howard Welch, who was the head of Fidelity Pictures, he offered her a chance to make this movie, and she loved the character of Eleanor Johnson so much that she put some of her own money into the production and really got behind it. And I found lots of wonderful memos and things that corroborated just the extent to which she participated, which I believe includes the selection of the director, Norman Foster, who was a protege of Orson Welles. He had been an actor in his early life and was actually the husband of Claudette Colbert in the 1930s when he was an actor. They had one of the weirdest marriages ever. Just look that up online. I'm not going to go into it, but that was strange. And yeah, they didn't even live together. It was like a Woody and Mia thing way back in the 30s, you know. And then he actually made a lot of pictures in Mexico during the 1940s. He had worked with Orson Welles on his famous and aborted project, It's All True, and Norman Foster and John Fonte, the writer, were going to do this section of the film together, and he had scouted locations in South America and in Mexico to do this, and sort of fell in love with Mexico and bought a house there and made pictures in Mexico during the 1940s. Norman Foster was actually the guy who sort of discovered Ricardo Montalban down there and ended up greasing the skids for him to have a Hollywood career. And he also knew Ann Sheridan because she had a house in Mexico as well, and they were kind of neighbors. And when he returned to Hollywood in the late 1940s and was making pictures at Universal, it was Ann Sheridan who said, I think Norman Foster would be a terrific director for this picture. A lot of super talented people were involved in this production, and there was no continuity script on the film, which I tried to find. And some of you may know a continuity script is a script that's actually put together at the end that is everything that actually appeared in the movie. And they very often would give this to people within the company or critics who wanted to see how the movie veered from the screenplay or didn't. And there was no continuity script because, as somebody in the office at Fidelity said, they were kind of making this up as they went along. Not in terms of the plot, of course, but in terms of the dialogue, because Ann Sheridan was a tremendous wit in her own right. And so, as was Dennis O'Keefe, who also wrote several screenplays of his own during this period, as was Robert Keith, who plays the police inspector, Officer Ferris, Detective Ferris, in this movie, who is the father of actor Brian Keith, and was a Broadway actor and a writer himself. And he and Norman Foster were going to form a production company and make movies on their own after they met making this movie. Last thing I'll say about it, it's dear to my heart because it's set in San Francisco in the mid-20th century, my hometown, and I think this is one of the best depictions of San Francisco, the real San Francisco, not the postcard San Francisco that I've ever seen. And Part of the reason for that is it's photographed by a man named Hal Moore, who was born in San Francisco and was one of the oldest and most veteran cinematographers in Hollywood. He was building his own cameras when he was a young boy and pioneered a lot of techniques with deep focus and miniatures and special photography processes that would become standardized in the industry. It was actually Hal Moore invented a lot of that. So there were a lot of really tremendous people who worked on this, but it was a film that, as you saw, entirely slipped through the cracks and was a great disappointment to Ann Sheridan that it really didn't do any business. But whenever I introduce this film live, I dedicate it to Ann Sheridan because this was her baby, and I'm very happy that we were able to save the baby from the fire and be able to put it back up on the screen for you to enjoy. So enjoy Woman on the Run.